the number of calls I've taken from other elected officials, from colleagues, from friends that have told me to just drop this. Just drop this, Katie. It's gonna hurt your political career. It's gonna make you look bad. I actually had one person ask me if it was more important to me to be right than to be effective. And what I've told every single one of them is that you can take Skyler's name off of this and put the name of any single one of the people here or any single person in this community, and it would still be that important to me. This is a fundamental right. It's a pattern that the city is using to suppress free speech and dissent, and it cannot stand, and we have no choice but to fight this with everything we have.
This is all in service of realizing that vision. So I am extremely honored to be here, to be standing next to this amazing councilwoman who is somebody that I have an incredible amount of respect and adoration for, and to be standing here with all of you, because really it's for all of us. So I guess I'll end it with thank you, and we'll see you around.
This has nothing to do with maintaining workplace safety or civility. This is about silencing, disrupting, or otherwise chilling the free exercise of First Amendment speech of abolitionists, anti-racists, anti-fascists, or any other community members demanding social justice and systemic change here in Sacramento. The city's political establishment is so desperate to maintain its status quo on power that it will brazenly abuse its authority, its delegated authority, in retaliation against people who would challenge it, threatening their jobs, their livelihoods, their access to resources, and their basic human rights of anyone who would criticize City Manager Howard Chan, Mayor Steinberg, or any other city officials who aren't frequently confused with the nation of Venezuela. The old guard of Sacramento City can't accept sharing power with those of us who would advocate for reimagining public safety without police.
While the suit specifically named Skyler, it is undoubtedly an attempt at defamation for some of Sacramento's most dedicated organizers and progressive champions. This attempt to restrain Katie and her staff is a blatant attempt to blacklist people who disagree with those most entrenched in city power.
As a business owner, I see this as a waste of taxpayer money and a political prosecution. As an activist, I see this as another attempt in a long line of actions trying to silence the voices of the community that are looking for progressive change.
He speaks truth to power and fights for others through his work on a local podcast, his mutual aid efforts with several organizations, and his support at innumerable rallies for healthcare, LGBTQ rights, and housing over the years. We also understand that this fight is not just about Skyler. In the past year alone, Sacramento Police Chief Daniel Hahn, Mayor Darrell Steinberg, and members of the City Council have consistently shown contempt for leftist politics and activists, publicly spreading misleading information about protesters, including their intentions, actions, and identities. Under the leadership of Chief Daniel Hahn, Sacramento police have repeatedly targeted demonstrators, attacking them with the very violence the city claims to abhor. They illegally threaten protesters' right to assemble, while alternatively supporting demonstrations made by right-wing nationalists, the Proud Boys, and other pro-fascist, notoriously violent organizations. With their recent vote on June 15th to increase the police budget by $9.4 million, the mayor and city council are rewarding the police violence while neglecting vital community needs. Make no mistake, the city and its coercive arm are trying to impose a chilling effect on the First Amendment rights of Sacramento residents who disagree with them.
I mean, it's pretty obvious that you're not a violent thug. I mean,
Thank you.
but a lot of statements coming out of a lot of people concerned on the progressive side is that words matter, and the words you put out could be construed as inciting violence and welcoming violence. Do you see that? What were you trying to do? Was that your intent? Or?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, absolutely in no way was I trying to incite or create or embrace violence of any kind. What I was trying to do, I mean the statement in question, right? We all know the one I'm talking about.
Video comes out of like activists finding like Mitch McConnell eating dinner with his wife in a restaurant or somewhere, and they like yell at him and shout at him and he has to leave the restaurant or whatever. And people are like, look, That's just not how politics are done. Like there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way, and there's civility here, and there's decorum, and when you go outside of that, it's really bad. But like, to me, it's like, if you have a job like the mayor of Sacramento, or the city manager of Sacramento, or the police chief of Sacramento, and you use that position to like govern aggressively in a way that makes life more unlivable for the people you're supposed to be representing, that makes it so that people can't afford to live in their neighborhoods, makes it so that people can't afford housing, can't afford food, six this like violent force of cops on people, and now people are, like, we have people who literally die in the streets, right? And that's due to leadership. That's due to decisions, conscious decisions being made by guys like Steinberg and Howard Chan. And so this notion that you get to do that with like basically like impunity, and then you just get to go home and like sleep in your bed and like have a good night's rest or whatever, like that's hubris on a scale that like kind of blows my mind. Like, absolutely not. You don't get to do that. Like, you should, like, if you go into a position where you are like leading a government which is supposed to be representing the interests of all the people who live within the confines of whatever that structure is, and you do it to lower the quality of everybody's life, and in some cases kill them, you should always be worried that people are going to find out where you live and fuck your shit up, right? And again, to compare this to something that happened nationally, right? Like, you guys all saw that thing recently with the minimum wage vote, when Kristen Sinema comes walking down the floor of Congress and does that little like move where she like puts the thumbs down or whatever. Like, that's frustrating, of course, on a million different levels. But like, for one, that's frustrating because there's no consequences. She's not afraid of anything. Like, with that move, she cast millions of people into like continued poverty, right? And like into this like continued like version of American life that is like,
and deaths will result because of
exactly. And
vote.
she does it with like a little dance move, and that to me, like, that makes me furious. It's like, dude, you should be terrified for the rest of your life. You should never be able to leave your house if that is how you're going to use your position to govern. And like, to me, the same thing sort of applies with the mayor and the city manager of this city. It's like, no, you don't get to do that. You do not get to make the decisions that you have made over and over and over and over and over again to the detriment of everybody who lives here, and then go home to your fucking little McMansion in Natomas and like have a good night's rest. I'm sorry. You don't get to do that. You do not have the right to that. Absolutely not.
The veil is being lifted.
What I'm trying to do there is create a conversation around accountability.
But did you see how your words could be misconstrued? If indeed, words matter, and that people listen to, whether it be the president or someone else, when words come out like that, they're going to jump in.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in really quickly and encourage everybody to listen to the entire episode, because literally the entire episode was about exactly this. It was about calling protesters violent when they had done nothing violent. And literally at the end of the episode, you can hear a quote from one of the co-hosts that say, gosh, they don't care about these statements that we're making. They think this conversation is so violent. They don't care about community accountability. They're not interested in transparency. Literally, when you take anything out of context, but anyone who was actually listening to that episode and the words that were said know that they were talking about protest. They were talking about political accountability. And you can't take it out of context if we're really talking about context and interpretation. Also, it was not a direct threat. And so I think there's a lot of legal boundaries here that need to be crossed if we're going to go to the step of actually filing litigation to keep someone from coming to City Hall. I've repeatedly asked if Skyler ever said anything, say, we're going to so-and-so's house and we're going to assault them. Those statements have never come out of his mouth. He's never committed a pattern of action that would lead us to think that he was going to do that. And that is the threshold that the city has said was met that I disagree with.
And one of the questions, Skyler, you mentioned the fact that you're trying to mend fences and work within the confines of your job. Yet, do you think you can do that with this lawsuit, basically saying, hey, city, you wronged me and you owe us money?
Absolutely, and I would hope that they would expect the same from me. When they filed this temporary restraining order against me, that didn't change the fact for me that the bottom line at the end of the day is for me to come in, join Katie's team, work to mend fences, work to build relationships with city council, the mayor, and the city manager, and serve the people of Sacramento. That's the bottom line for me. That was true when there was a possibility of a temporary restraining order against me for me, and I would certainly hope that is true in reciprocation from city staff now that we are filing this suit.
I mean, any adult needs to be able to admit when they were wrong. And I think in this case, it doesn't, just because we're worried about relationships doesn't mean we can't name something as wrong, and that the city is incapable of admitting that they were wrong and moving past this as well. So I don't think the responsibility lays so much on Skyler as it does the people who wronged him in this case.
Many of the supporters here mentioned the fact that the city isn't spending enough money on their resources on helping the homeless, the poor, other social issues that could prevent violence. Yet Mark was saying that, hey, look, we're going to extract money from the city. So is there a double message there? The city doesn't have enough money, but we want money from them in filing this lawsuit?
We would love the city to be spending more money dealing with the basic issues of homelessness, lack of housing, lack of social services, and the misuse of police power. We love that. Unfortunately, the only thing the city seems to respond to is the threat of money damages. And in this case, they actually have inflicted injury on the people who are standing here today. And we are entitled by the law that the legislature has passed to recover that money from the people who have wronged them. And that's what we're going to do.
And while you're here, is there room for negotiation here? When you're saying you're going to take it down the litigation trail all the way to the end, or is there some?
Look, I would love it if the city attorney were to call us, any one of us, and say, how can we make this right? We realize we're wrong. We didn't know what the law was. We overstepped our bounds, etc. Any one of those things. If they reach out to us, we'll certainly be receptive.
And one other thing, if you are to win damages, where does that money go?
Where does it go? Well, that depends what kind of damages we get, whether it's for compensation or attorney's fees.